So yeah, so today I want to go over like kind of 3 basic strategies. I think you guys have some of you have done little bits of pieces of each one, but I want to give you 3 different ones, and they kind of vary on levels of experience and how much time they're going to take you and a lot of other different variables. So from fixable, yeah, actually I'll just go into it. Okay, so a little bit about myself. Yeah, I kind of told you guys, worked for Shell for 12 years. These are our current companies that I own that I kind of founded. Well, I did found. The first one was Gregerson Properties. That was initially just the LLC I created to hold my rental properties. Because when I bought my first property in 2010 in Laramie, it was a house I was living in. My dad actually just helped co-sign on a loan with me. And we used about like $10,000 of like my college savings that I hadn't used. And we actually used that as a down payment. We bought the first house and still have that one to this day in Laramie. And actually the way I got my second one is 5 years later, I refinanced that one because we fixed it up a little bit. The market had come up and we refinanced that one, bought a second one. And then it was just kind of game on from there. And then about 3 years ago, well, it's been almost 4 years ago, as you guys saw, the market started to go way up and you couldn't really buy on the MLS anymore and buy good fix and flip houses, right? So that's when we created YO Houses. That's like our marketing property that goes direct to seller. And we reach out to sellers to find people who want to sell off market. And that way we can make the prices work. And then also, as we'll get into later, there's some deals that we actually just end up selling to other investors that we don't take down. Because often we find more deals than we could take down. So we'll just sell it off to another investor. And then Revive. This is one that's really transformed over the last year. This is our construction company because after years of banging my head against the wall, dealing with general contractors and subcontractors and laborers, day laborers, all those people, I figured we just got to invest the money and bring them in-house. So we now have a full-time project manager in Sheridan, just brought one in Casper last month and one in Laramie. So we're excited to kind of roll out Revive. That's another big focus of our company is to do more retail work. So keep our guys busy and yeah, really grow that company. And it's been truly a game changer when it comes to fixing and flipping, because I think that's probably, and you guys might agree, that's the biggest risk, I think, when it comes to fixing and flipping. So that's our companies and a little bit about me. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 of them. So fix and flip, turnkey investing, which that might be a completely new concept for you guys, and private money investing. And I guess I'm gonna go in deep into explaining each one of these, but this is kind of the levels of like, each one varies, right? So in terms of your involvement, fix and flip is super active. You gotta be like hands-on watching it, right? That's like a lot of professional people are doing that, but you can also do it as a side hustle. When it comes to private money investing, it could be completely passive. Like I've actually worked with a couple guys in this room. I've worked with Tyler and Tris, and they haven't had to do anything, right? They're not swinging a hammer. They're not, I mean, they might underwrite the deal and look at the numbers on the front end, but they don't have to be involved. So completely passive there. Turnkey is right in the middle, right? And I'll define turnkey here in a minute. The other thing is risk, right? The high end risk reward, right? The highest risk, highest reward is fix and flipping. The lower risk, lower reward, just lower returns, and the safer way is going to be with the private money investing, right? And then and the last thing is control, right? So if you're running the fix and flip, you have control of that project, right? You could control the deal versus if you're private money investing, typically you're handing off the control and the work to the operator or the investor. And feel free to ask questions as we go. We'll have more time at the end, but I want it to be interactive, and I'll probably call on you guys too to get your input, so it's not just me talking. Let's talk about the avatars for these different types, right? Probably a lot of you guys know fix and flippers. Typically, they're going to be contractors, or they're full-time real estate investors, or they're people who want a side hustle, right? Turnkey, this is really good. And really turnkey and private money lenders, they're pretty much the same avatar. Really, I would say the only difference is on private money is you could be a private money lender with any amount of money. Like there's some people you could invest $10,000 and be a private money lender. We've done that with some people, right? And it could be as high as, well, the sky's the limit as much as you want to invest, right? But when it comes to turnkey, that typically means you're going to be buying the property yourself. And so you're either going to need cash or a down payment. So to buy a property in Sheridan, even with a 25% down payment, you're going to need at least $50,000 of cash, right? So this is kind of a lower barrier to entry to getting in, right? And then the highest is going to be up here. If you're fixing and flipping, you're going to want, I mean, that's not set in stone, but having at least 100,000 of cash to play with, because by the time you do a down payment and having cushions, you're going to want to have some cash, right? So that's going to take the most cash. The other thing is these turnkey investors, they're great for people who have a good W-2. And some of you guys, this might be good, maybe Kristen, like people that they don't want to deal with the flip, but they have a great W-2 income. Like that's a great way to get in, own the property yourself, And yeah, and just then you get all the benefits of being a real estate owner and investor. And yeah, you pretty much, if you have good credit and a surplus of cash, either one of these, turnkey or private money, are both great option. The other thing is, private money investors are often people tired of the stock market, or maybe in Trish's situation, he wanted to get diversification from the stock market. But I find a lot of people we work with are they're just sick and tired of the volatility of the stock market, and they like being a private money lender because they're backed by real estate and they're getting a good return. We'll dive deeper into that. But those are kind of the avatars, so you can see where you fit. And a lot of people might fit in all three buckets. Okay, so fix and flips. We could go really into depth on this, of all the different keys to success, and I'm probably gonna go quickly through this, but there's a lot when it comes to fixing and flipping, right? And I'm sure Devin could talk to it. There's a lot of risk and a lot to learn, and I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons the hard way, right? So fixing flipping is not the best one to go start with. I mean, I would probably start in one of those other ones we talked about first, because fixing and flipping is high risk. You're dealing with contractors, overruns, all that. I mean, I did want to go over these, but if you're thinking about it, these are kind of my key things to watch out for. So first one is buying a bad deal, right? A lot of deals will look good, or maybe you're being pitched by somebody, an agent or a wholesaler, or somebody's trying to pitch this deal to you. But if you buy a bad deal, that's kind of where it's all downhill from there, basically. The other thing is managing contractors. We've talked about that already at length. That is going to be the most complicated part of a fix and flip. Not having enough liquidity. This one kills a ton of people because you just don't foresee all the cost overruns you're going to run into, all the things you're going to run it, all the unforeseen things in the house that you can't uncover, and then just the market shifting or whatever. But if you have liquidity, well, really a lot of these things you can mitigate if you have enough liquidity. But if you don't have enough liquidity, you'll crash and burn it, and it's not pretty. Seasonality, that's the other thing to watch out for, especially you guys are starting to see it here in Sheridan, right? Well, we haven't seen it the last couple of years because I think things were just selling no matter what season, but definitely come September, at least what we see is September, October, November, December, not a whole lot is moving. Not a whole lot of buyers are out. So that can really impact you as a fix and flipper. If your market, sharing a story from last year, I was talking to my project manager who's no longer with us in Laramie. I'm like, we got these 3 properties. If we don't get them listed, where these things are going to sit. I do not want to be selling these houses in September, October. And sure enough, these 3 houses we didn't finish. And one of them, we're literally closing this month. So I ended up holding that thing for 12 months because we didn't hit the market at the right time, right? But that was also due to having some shortcomings on the finish out of the house. But anyway, timing is very important. Let's see, unforeseen costs. We kind of talked about that. You just got to mitigate that with cash and liquidity. Permits and city regulations. That's another one too. I mean, I'll open that up. I know, for example, Laramie is becoming a huge pain in the ass to get things done. And it's a huge variable when it comes to fixing and flipping. And the last thing is holding costs. And I'll show you guys some kind of case studies, but holding costs is something a lot of people don't account for that can eat you alive too. So, especially when you got to pay Christian all these points and all this interest every month,
Banks gotta get that money.
That's right. All right. Okay, here's the first case study. So this one here in town, it was a 1535 Parker. So we bought this one. So this was a fix and flip. We bought it for $250,000. By the time we finished it all off, we put about $63,000 into it. Our holding costs, again, that's a big number, right? And as you see this, we held this for 6 months. This one I would say was it was successful, but that was a big hindrance. And that's what really ate into our profit, because holding that thing with interest payments and utilities and insurance and taxes, it all adds up, right? So we literally had $9,000 of holding costs. We ended up selling it. Again, the fortunate thing you guys have in Sheridan is a super strong market, especially at price points like this. Me and JR were talking about that. We found that, you guys probably know this, anything $200,000 to $400,000 will move quick, right? Everything else starting to get $700,000 to $800,000, that's a little bit more risky. But if you're in this price point in Sheridan, from what I've seen the last couple of years, you're doing really well and the house will move. And I'll get into another tip here too. But so anyway, our profit was around $24,750. I would say for all the work we put into it, that I probably would not take another deal like that to make that much, just because it was a ton of work. But at the end of the day, we still made a profit, so we'll definitely. And this was actually really the first project we did with our new crew here in Sheridan. So a better case study of this same one in Sheridan is this one up on Zuni. So this one we purchased, actually we just closed on this June 1st, and we listed it earlier this week. So it was 6 weeks. We got in and out. renovated it, bought it at a good price, and I think this profit is going to look a lot better. It's going to be around 50,000. So we bought it 305, we put 40,000 into it. Our holding costs, again, look at that difference from that $6,000 that we're going to keep in our pocket because we did this faster, right? Sales price, again, we're not under contract yet, but I'm projecting 420 and a profit of 51,000. So those are kind of two examples of that. Again, I think a lot of people, if they're doing it, they're going to be more like up here where you're spending a lot of time. This obviously we improved a lot with a better crew and just iterating it, right? So you just get better with time. Okay, turnkey. So we haven't, who had actually, let me ask that, who had heard of turnkey investing before today? Or who's ever heard of it? Most of you guys kind of understand what that means. So basically, to summarize really quick, you're buying the house ready to go, and often you're buying it with a tenant in place. So when we sell a property turnkey, we've literally went out and found a tenant, or we're going to find a tenant, and that's part of the service, right? Because if you want to be a buy and hold investor, and that's where I guess the big kind of transition from fix and flip to here is this is going to be for a buy and hold investor. But you're going to have your own, typically along with buying that, you're going to buy the property management's going to come with it, right? So they're obviously going to take a small percentage each month, but really it's truly turnkey where you get to own the property and you don't have to really worry about anything. I mean, this is kind of a good path of it, like figure out where you're going to invest. That's one of the cool things about turnkey. And I mentioned it here geographically, like you could do turnkey anywhere. I mean, you definitely want to make sure you find the right connection and the right guy to find you a property, but you could really pick your market. Once you do that, you want to get your financing. So again, we're going to talk to the bank, make sure that we could finance it. I would highly recommend using, well, I should say that. It's worked good. The way we invest and to really take advantage of leverage, utilizing a bank, especially on a turnkey deal. Well, let me say that. I think if you're fixing and flipping or you're like fixing properties up and refinance them, like it's not as efficient way to get it, because if you want to minimize the amount of money you're putting down, turnkey I think is one of the best ways because you're not going to have to pay for any repairs. You're not going to have to, because if you go fix and flip and then you end up holding it, if you go over budget, I mean, that comes out of your pocket, right? You can't go to the bank, you can, but it's a pain in the butt to go renew your loan and up that, right? So the nice thing about turnkey is you could just go put your 20 to 25% down and then the rest is covered, right? So that's a really efficient way to get a good ROI based on, we call it your cash on cash return, right? So that's why I really like turnkey because you're basically financing everything in. And the other thing is typically if you're buying a turnkey deal, at least from us, you're buying a deal that we just renovated and fixed up. So if you're buying the right property, they've maybe updated some of the systems and that can really help with your cash flow on a rental property, right? If it just got rehabbed and they replaced HVAC and the roof and plumbing and all that stuff is checked out, because that's what can eat you alive on a rental property. But anyway, you can just kind of work your way down. Again, find your provider, find somebody who sells turnkeys, get an inspection, put it under contract. Yeah, and then you're just working with the bank. It's just like buying another house. Yeah, but I think probably the biggest benefit of turnkey is you buy a cash flowing asset day one, right? Because if you're a fix and flipper or again, doing the BRRRR strategy, you've got a long time where you're not making any money, or if you're doing new construction. You're gonna bet if you buy the right property and the tenant's in place, you start making a return like day one. All right, here's a quick turnkey case study. So this is the deal we're actually selling turnkey in Casper. This one's a little bit more creative because we're actually letting the financing, we're leaving in place because I've negotiated and put this deal together where I'm gonna assume this guy's loan. So he has got, I don't have his loan amount up there, but it's basically 225 minus 57. So it's about 170,000. So he owes 170. He's got a 2.5% rate and his mortgage is 961, right? But this house will rent for 1,800 a month. So this is one very tempted to keep this one, but I'd rather actually, because we're trying to sell more turnkey stuff, I'm going to sell this one turnkey to where somebody could put 57,000 down. But if you look at the cash flow, I just ran a quick cash flow analysis based on the rent, the monthly payment, and then I put a little small margin in for like expenses and or basically just, some little safety net of expenses. And that cash on cash is a 13% cash on cash return, which depending on what you're looking at, if you're a turnkey buyer, that's pretty good. Okay, so anyway, that's a good example of a turnkey. There's also just straight turnkey where I could just go sell this house for 225 and let somebody get their own loan. But again, it's not going to cash flow that well if you're assuming and paying First Federal 7.5%, right? I keep picking on you guys. On the low end?
It's going to keep going up too.
All right, cool. So private money lending. So a lot of benefits here. higher returns, or so high returns, and this is maybe just comparing it versus other investments, but typically when you're comparing it to like a money market account, where maybe in money market accounts are doing well now, right? You could probably get 5%. And so this was really a great deal when you were getting like 2 or 3%. But typically terms and percentages, I'll talk it more later, but like our private money stuff is going to be from like 8 to 12%, and you're backed by real estate, right? So that's why we put that there. Diversification, right? You can diversify, have multiple properties. Security, I'm going to get into the security part because I think it's really important you guys understand how you're secured as a private money lender. Flexibility, that's what's great as an operator using private money, is I love the flexibility. Again, I love working with First Federal and other banks, but I have to jump through a lot of hoops and they make me do a lot of extra work, right? When I work with a private money lender like Tris or Tyler, like they just got to understand the deal, understand what we're doing, and then they don't make me jump through hoops, right? Lower risk, it's all about relationships. A big part of private money is the relationships. Yeah, I want to show you guys, I want to dive a little bit deeper rather than the details of that one. Okay, so typical private money lending structure, right? So there's two fundamentally parts of it, right? You have debt and equity, right? So if you're doing debt, that means, well, typically, okay, let me back up. So if you're doing debt, it could be secured and unsecured, right? I'm going to talk more about when it's secured, but there are times when, if you have a good enough relationship with somebody, that they'll do unsecured, or maybe they'll secure it with their business, right? But typically private money lending is secured with a specific property. And that's either in a first position lien, like the bank does, or sometimes you could do a second position lien. So that's the debt side. You can also do private money with partnerships, right? If you guys look at like this page here, this was an equity deal where we had LPs. I was a general partner and we brought in LPs as limited partners, right? So that's more equity, right? And that's what I was talking about here. You could set up a fund, like this was a fund. There can also be syndications. You guys have probably heard of those on bigger multifamily properties. You could syndicate. And yeah, I won't get into preferred returns and waterfalls, but that's a lot more. There's a whole nother complex world of investing in a fund. But the big difference is you have equity in this, right? So you're taking more risk, right? Versus typically on the debt side, it's a fixed interest rate, right? You're the bank. Cool, let me keep moving. So, oh yeah, this is what I want to talk about was like how with private money, how do you like risk mitigation? How do you secure yourself, right? So what we do with our private money lenders is I wanted to show you two, actually the forms, what the paperwork looks like. So there's the security. So you have a promissory note and then you have a mortgage. So the promissory note, this one's actually not a page, it was 2 pages, but this is typically 1 page. It goes over the terms, right? It says so-and-so investment amount, talks about the interest rate, talks about how it's secured and all that. It's very simple. It's not like a typical bank where you got like all these pages of documents. It's literally a 1-page promissory note that outlines terms and then a mortgage. So this is what protects you though. The mortgage gets filed at the county. So if it was in Sheridan, we'd file it at Sheridan County. This is what prevents me or whoever is the owner of the property from doing anything without paying you back, right? This is filed at the county. The property will not be sold without this being paid off. That makes sense? How you're secured? And basically, so if you're the guy you're investing with runs off to Mexico or just something happens to him, you don't have to worry about, oh crap, now what am I gonna do? Like literally, you're secured with that document and they reference each other, right? So this mortgage will reference this promissory note. That way they know what to get paid back, right? That's what I always tell our private money lenders to say, hey, something does happen to me, like you're well documented, it's gonna get taken care of, right? Some other ways is having a lender's insurance policy. So just like the bank has a title insurance policy, you can also get one as a private money lender. The only way that would ever come into effect is if, like say there was a title dispute on the property that was bought, and either way, that would ensure you that you would still get paid back, right? So just like you get title insurance, you can get lender's title insurance to protect you. The other thing is making sure, you could make sure you're listed as an insured on that. Okay, I'll give you the example. So if I'm buying a house and JR's investing in it, I can list him on my insurance as an additional insured. That way, if the house does burn down, JR doesn't have to worry about getting paid back, right? He's gonna be listed on the insurance policy. Then the underwriting. So this is kind of how you can understand the deal. And I mentioned this at the very beginning on the front end. If you are gonna be a private money lender, like understanding the deal that you're investing in is important, right? So first thing is look at the loan to value, right? So if we're doing let's look at one of these. Actually, I'll show you on the case study in a second. But you want to look at, hey, if this property had to be liquidated today, is there enough money to pay you back, right? And can the market drop? So typically, if you're at 70 to 80% loan to value, and that should be all the loans on the property, that might be a first position with a bank and then a second position with you. If all that together is 80%, then you've got 20% of cushion, right? For the market to drop, pay agents, all that stuff, right? And then the other thing is the cash flow. Like a lot of times we'll underwrite our deals for private money lenders to say, hey, we might go up to 90%, but the property is cash flowing, right? So if something did happen to me, like you could keep the property and you would make the cash flow that I'm making, right? So that's one way to mitigate it. And then ultimately the confidence you have in the operator, right? They always say you're not investing in the deal, you're investing in the person that's in the investor. That's a big part of it, and having some trust and knowing that they're not going to bail on you, and knowing if things go sideways, they're going to make you whole. So that's a big part of it. I want to show you these case studies real quick. So this one is, okay, we got Eagle Way. So this one was, and you guys got this is page 3, I believe. Yeah, so this was in Rock Springs. So I did this with an investor. These are all case studies we've done with investors. So he invested $75,000. This one is actually set up as more of like a 50-50 partnership. That's why his return was 61%. Like he took all the risk with me, right? Versus I'll show you some of them where you're taking no risk, but he took the risk. Therefore, in 3 months, he made 11 grand on a 75. So that was a 61% return on his money, right? It kind of shows the deal a little bit there. This is more involved than I typically, if I'm going to do a partnership, it's got to be a bigger amount, right? Because there's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. But there's definitely more paperwork to this. I'll say that. This is a simpler way though. Okay, so this is Zuni. So I showed you guys this one at the beginning. So we actually used a private money lender on this one and a bank. So what we did is we got a bank loan. So the total purchase price on this one, it's not on here, but oh yeah, here it is. We bought it for $305. So what I did is I got about a roughly it's about a $220,000 loan from a small local bank. And then I combined that with the $96,000 from the private money lender, right? So this private money lender is in second position. But if you think about it, if you're looking at the LTV of what this house, here's the ARV, I had it at 415. And so I actually showed you here. So here's the first lien at 228. The LTV is 78%. That way you can kind of see that the market would have to really shift before we'd be in a bind, right? Oh man, I missed my big investor tip earlier. Or wait, is it? If not, I'll bring it up now. Nope, okay. So here's one other thing. Let's say that something catastrophic does happen and like, yeah, the bottom falls out of the market and somehow this 78% gets all used up. What we like to do, and I was talking to JR about this today, like I do not like buying and flipping $700,000 to $800,000 houses because if that thing goes south, there's nothing to do but lose money basically, right? But this one, let's say it does go south, I could go and I could put a tenant in there, and although this is starting to get on the upper threshold because we bought it for $300,000, right? It's probably pretty much going to break even. But I like buying stuff from like $200,000 to $300,000. That way, if I do got to hold on to it and I can't sell it, I can still cash flow it. So to me, that is one of the biggest tips to mitigate when you're fixing and flipping. The biggest mitigator is having 2 exit strategies. And ask me how I know, it's from experience. We were flipping houses in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the ARV was like $550,000. And when we ran into a bad batch of contractors and I was using hard money and the seasonality, we were listing things in like October, November, like I had no choice but to just drop price and lose a bunch of money. And after that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to fix and flip stuff that I can't hold as a rental. So that's a big tip if you're thinking about fix and flipping. And the way to I think it's a great tip if you're thinking about doing a fix and flip, just buy it at a price point where you can rent it. If you do that, it's really hard to lose. Just got to have a little liquidity. Anyway, so that's a good case study on this one. We did 12% debt for this one, just a fixed 12% that we're paying this investor. We actually rounded up to make it easy numbers to 100,000. So he's going to make in 3 months 12% of 100,000, right? Well, sorry, prorated. That 12% is annual, right? So if we give his money back in 3 months, we'll either go he can have his money back and do something else, or he can go putting in another deal. But again, so as compared to the last deal, he's not getting as high of a return. He's at 12%, but he doesn't have to take any risk, right? And I think here's my last one. Okay, so this is kind of a hybrid. So this is on the last page. So I know some of you guys that I talked to back a couple months when we did our last meeting, we were talking about this big multifamily we did. So this was a 63-unit apartment complex in Casper we bought. We ended up, so the total equity part of it was $1 million, and it was about a $2.4 million bank loan. So how I structured this deal, and we used multiple investors, including myself, was we did a little bit of debt and we did equity. So let's maybe start with the equity. So I actually partnered with another partner who we have a 50-50 partnership with. We each put $500,000 of equity into the deal to buy this. And it was a pretty insane. The quick numbers on this, these are 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments. At the price we got them, we paid $60,000. That's purchase plus the rehab. So $60,000 a unit. So it's pretty crazy. And these rent for $800-900. Honestly, we're going to probably get $1,000 a month on these. So really, really good cash flow. So what we're going to do with this one is we're actually going to do the burst strategy on this. We're going to stabilize this thing and get the value up. And then we're going to go to a longer term bank and actually use like more go to like more Freddie. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you get to a certain price point, you can go to Freddie Mae, Fannie Mae, or Freddie Mac, Freddie Mae loans and get government backed loans. So this will blow your mind. I actually got quoted in today's rates. This was like about a month ago. I'm like, hey, when I'm ready to refinance, what does it look like? And he said 30-year amortization, 5.75%. Can you believe that? It's crazy that like there's this gap, right, where you could get really good rates on until you get to like a jumbo loan, and then you've got this big gap. But once you get to a certain threshold, you can actually get government-backed loans. So anyway, what we're going to do is get the rents up, get it stabilized, and then we'll be able to pull our money out. And basically at that point, the investor's return is infinite, and so is mine. And yeah, and then we'll just be able to hold the asset, and we'll have a better rate. And if not, if bad things happen, we'll just continue to live off the cash flow. But the other thing I want to show you is because one of my big goals in my business is I put a ton of money into our marketing. I put a ton of money into our contractors and into Revive. Like my goal is when I'm buying holds that I don't have to use a bunch of my capital. So what I did on this deal is we actually did of my $500,000, because I knew it had so much, or actually because I had equity in other properties, I raised my $500,000 through debt. So the other thing we do is, am I going too fast? Probably am. Any questions so far? I'm getting on a roll. But here's another way to do private money ways. And I've done this with Tris and other people. It's a great way we do a second mortgage on a cash flowing rental property. So, all right, think about this 2 ways. You can invest in a fix and flip, and you could be a private money lender and you're in first position, right? So, and you typically only want to go to 70% of the ARV. That way there's like a 30% cushion if things go bad. The other way to do it is, and I've done this with several lenders, is they do a second on a property that's cash flowing. So let's say I got a property, I'll try to think of an example, a property that is worth $400,000 now. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. In Houston, we bought this house 3 years ago, right when COVID hit and prices dropped. And I bought this, I'm all in right now at $400,000, but the house is worth $700,000. But I got a 2.75% rate. So I don't want to go refinance that thing. Like I want to lock that in place. So what I did is I went to a private money investor and said, hey, why don't you give me a $150,000 line of credit? Because now if you look at it, 400 plus 150, there's still only 550 of debt and the house is worth 700,000. So he's still protected. It's great for me because I'm getting access to capital to go take down a deal like this, and he's in second position. Does that make sense? And then the other beauty of that is we can lock that up for like a year or 2 years or 18 months or whatever. And I don't have to go give him his money back in 6 months or 3 months, right? Because there's some people that like on their first deal doing private money, doing a 3-month turnaround is great, right? Because you don't have to commit for long term, right? But as you'll find, once people start investing in enough deals, they'll be like, well, I don't want you to give me my money back every 3 months and then I got to go underwrite another deal or figure out what I'm going to do. This is a great way to put money at good returns out for a longer time, right? So that's what I did to kind of summarize it all. We did a partner 50-50, and then I raised my $500,000 with debt on other properties that basically had equity. Cool. Well, that's it. Time for questions. So really quick, if you guys want to scan the QR code, if you guys are interested in, so we, as I mentioned, like we'll find deals off market that we don't take down that we'll share with all our investors. I know Ryan gets them and some of you other guys do. So if you're interested in deals that we're passing on, and again, and I don't just like, lately, I would always prefer, even Jared and I were talking, we got one up on Papago that we got at a really good deal. And it's like, I would much rather sell that to an investor and get money now than I'll probably make double if I keep it and flip it next spring, right? But there's a lot of deals like that we'll come across. So if you want to get on our list for that, scan that code. Also, If you're more interested in turnkey, we sell a lot of our deals on turnkey. You saw the one in Casper, it'll be shared with this list. And then, yeah, also if you're just interested in being a private money lender and don't want to deal with any of the headaches and be the property owner and just get a fixed 8 to 12%, we do that too. You go, all right, questions, go ahead.